Andrew Carnegie. 5 lessons. Napoleon Hill learned as a student. The last will shock you. The year was 1908. A young reporter named Napoleon Hill sat across from the richest man in America. The room was cold, industrial. Steel beams framed the windows like the bones of an empire. Andrew Carnegie didn't smile when he spoke. He didn't need to. His voice carried the weight of railroads, factories, and fortunes built on iron and will. Napoleon Hill would go on to write one of the most famous books in history, Think and Grow Rich. Millions have read it. Millions have quoted it. But here's what most people don't know. Hill wasn't the master. He was the student. And Carnegie wasn't teaching motivation. He was teaching structure. He was teaching how empires are built, not how they're imagined. This isn't about positive thinking. This isn't about visualization or affirmations or believing hard enough. This is about 5 lessons Carnegie passed to Hill, lessons most people never hear because they were too uncomfortable to sell. The 5th one will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about success. But first, you need to understand something. Hill softened the message. Carnegie never did. If you're here because you want the truth, not the version that makes you comfortable, subscribe now. This channel doesn't repeat what's easy to hear. We go straight to what works. Let's begin. Here's the problem. Most people quote Napoleon Hill but ignore Andrew Carnegie. They talk about desire, faith, and autosuggestion. They frame success as a mental game. And they're not entirely wrong. But they're missing the foundation. Carnegie didn't theorize about success. He engineered it. He built U.S. Steel. He controlled more wealth than most nations. And when Hill interviewed him, Carnegie didn't hand him motivational speeches. He handed him a blueprint. The irony is this. Hill spent 20 years researching successful people. He interviewed Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Theodore Roosevelt. But Carnegie was the beginning. Carnegie was the one who said, "Go study the principles of success and write them down," and Hill did. But in the process of making those principles digestible for the masses, something was lost. The edges were smoothed. The discomfort was removed. The parts that made people question themselves were rewritten into affirmations. You see this in the comments under videos about Hill. People ask, is this real or just theory? They say, I tried this and nothing changed. They argue about whether mindset alone is enough. And the truth is, mindset alone isn't enough. Carnegie knew that. Hill knew that too. But only one of them said it out loud. So let's reframe this. Napoleon Hill became famous for documenting success. Andrew Carnegie became successful by living it. One was a messenger, the other was the source. And the 5 lessons you're about to hear weren't designed to inspire you. They were designed to eliminate excuses. Carnegie believed that success wasn't something you achieved. It was something you became. And there's a massive difference between those two ideas. Most people think in terms of goals. They say, I want to make $1 million. I want to build a business. I want financial freedom. And Carnegie would have looked at them and asked, who are you that would make that happen? Because wanting something and becoming the type of person who attracts it are not the same. Hill documented this principle in Think and Grow Rich, but he framed it through desire and belief. Carnegie framed it through identity. He didn't ask himself what he wanted. He asked himself who he needed to be. A man who controlled resources. A man who saw systems, not wishes. A man who made decisions others avoided. Hill learned this by watching. He saw that Carnegie didn't talk about success the way dreamers do. He didn't romanticize it. He embodied it. Every conversation, every negotiation, every dollar moved through the filter of identity. Am I acting like someone who wins or someone who hopes to? That question shaped everything. Here's what this means for you. If you want different results, become a different person first. Not metaphorically. Literally. Change how you spend your time. Change who you listen to. Change the standards you accept from yourself. Most people try to succeed while keeping their identity intact. Carnegie knew that was impossible. The person you are today created the life you have today. If you want a different life, you need to become someone else. This is why most people fail. They set goals but refuse to evolve. They want the result without the transformation. And Carnegie would have told you plainly, that doesn't work. Identity comes first. Results follow. Hill wrote about this, but he made it sound inspirational. Carnegie made it sound inevitable. And that's the difference between a teacher and a practitioner. So ask yourself right now, who are you? Not who do you want to be? Who are you? Based on your actions, your environment, your daily choices. Because that identity is either building your empire or keeping you stuck. And if you're honest, you already know which one it is. Carnegie had no tolerance for hesitation. None. He didn't believe in perfect timing. He didn't believe in waiting until you're ready. He believed that every day you delay is a day someone else moves forward. And in business, in wealth, in power, the person who moves first usually wins. Hill documented this as decisiveness, but Carnegie lived it as aggression, not reckless aggression, calculated urgency. He understood that most people lose not because they make the wrong decision, but because they don't make one at all. They wait. They overthink. They collect more information. They tell themselves they need another week, another month, another year. And while they wait, the opportunity closes. Carnegie built U.S. Steel because he acted when others hesitated. He consolidated the industry while competitors were still debating whether consolidation was possible. He didn't have all the answers. He had enough answers and the willingness to move. That was the difference. Hill tried to teach this. He wrote about the importance of decision and the danger of procrastination. But people read those words and still wait. They read Think and Grow Rich and then spend 6 months planning their business. They read about decisiveness and then delay the very decision that would change their life. Why? Because Hill made it sound like a mindset shift. Carnegie would have told you it's a discipline problem. Here's the reality. Waiting feels safe. It feels responsible. You tell yourself you're being smart, careful, strategic, but what you're really doing is avoiding risk. And Carnegie understood that without risk, there is no reward. You can't build an empire from safety. You can't create wealth from comfort. At some point, you have to move. And the longer you wait, the harder it becomes. Most people treat procrastination like a minor flaw. Carnegie treated it like a disease. Because that's what it is. It spreads. It justifies itself. It tells you that next week will be better, next month will be clearer. But next week never comes. There's always another reason to wait. And while you're waiting, someone else is building what you're planning. So here's the lesson Hill learned but rarely emphasized. Speed matters. Timing matters. And most of the time, the best moment to act is right now. Not because you're ready, not because it's perfect, but because waiting is the slowest way to fail. Carnegie didn't wait for permission. He didn't wait for certainty. He acted, adjusted, and won. And Hill watched him do it over and over again. If you take one thing from this lesson, take this. Stop preparing. Start moving. The gap between knowing and doing is where most dreams die, and Carnegie would tell you, that gap only exists because you allow it to. If you're someone who's tired of comfort content and wants the unfiltered truth about what it takes to build something real, subscribe. This channel is for people who choose action over theory. Carnegie didn't believe in motivation. He believed in systems. He believed in routines. He believed that the people who win are the people who show up every single day, regardless of how they feel. Motivation was irrelevant to him. It was unreliable, emotional, and fleeting. Discipline was structural, and structure doesn't care about your mood. Hill saw this firsthand. Carnegie woke at the same time. He reviewed his operations at the same time. He made decisions at the same time. Every part of his day was designed around consistency, not inspiration, and that's what separated him from everyone else. Most people wait to feel motivated before they act. Carnegie acted first. Motivation followed. This is one of the hardest lessons for people to accept, because we've been conditioned to believe that success requires passion, energy, excitement. And while those things help, they're not enough. Carnegie built his empire on days when he didn't feel passionate, on days when the work was boring, on days when motivation was nowhere to be found. He built it anyway, because he had discipline. Hill tried to explain this in his work, but he framed it through desire and burning purpose. He made it sound like you need a powerful why to sustain you, and that's partially true. But Carnegie would have told you that your why doesn't matter on Tuesday morning when you're tired and the work is repetitive. What matters is whether you've built a system that forces you to show up anyway. Here's the distinction. Motivation is what gets you started. Discipline is what keeps you going. And most people never transition from one to the other. They start strong, they feel excited, they believe this time will be different. But when the excitement fades and they're left with just the work, they quit. They tell themselves they lost motivation. What they really lost was structure. Carnegie understood that emotion is a terrible foundation for success. Because emotion changes. You can't build an empire on something that shifts every time you have a bad day. You build it on habits, on routines, on non-negotiable actions that happen whether you feel like it or not. And that's what Hill observed, even if he didn't always emphasize it. So here's the question. Do you have a system, or are you relying on how you feel? Because if your success depends on motivation, you're gambling. And Carnegie didn't gamble. He calculated, he structured, he removed the variable of emotion and replaced it with certainty. That's how he won. That's how anyone wins. People in the comments ask, can small habits really change your life? And the answer Carnegie would give is this: small habits are the only thing that change your life, not big decisions, not moments of inspiration. Daily actions, repeated over time, regardless of circumstance. That's the engine. Everything else is decoration. If you want to build something that lasts, stop waiting to feel ready. Stop waiting to feel motivated. Build the system. Follow the system. Let discipline carry you when motivation fails. That's the lesson Hill learned. And it's the lesson most people never apply. Carnegie was ruthless about his environment. He didn't just choose his business partners. He shaped every relationship, every conversation, every influence around him. And Hill learned quickly that environment wasn't just important, it was determinative. You don't rise above your environment, you become it. Most people think they can stay in the same circles, the same city, the same routines, and somehow transform. Carnegie would have told you that's delusional. Environment shapes identity faster than willpower ever could. If you're surrounded by people who think small, you'll think small. If you're surrounded by comfort, you'll stay comfortable. And if you want to build an empire, you need to be surrounded by empire builders. Hill documented this as the mastermind principle. He wrote about the power of surrounding yourself with people who elevate you. But Carnegie didn't just participate in masterminds. He created them, he controlled them. He brought together the sharpest minds in industry and made sure every conversation moved him forward. He didn't leave his environment to chance. He engineered it. Here's what that looked like in practice. Carnegie didn't spend time with people who drained him. He didn't tolerate mediocrity in his inner circle. He didn't stay loyal to relationships that no longer served his vision. And that sounds cold. It sounds transactional. But Carnegie wasn't building friendships. He was building U.S. Steel. And he understood that every person in his environment was either accelerating that or slowing it down. Hill tried to soften this lesson. He talked about harmony, collaboration, and mutual benefit. And those things matter. But Carnegie would have told you the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes you have to cut people off. Sometimes you have to leave the city you grew up in. Sometimes you have to walk away from family, from friends, from the life you know, because that life will never produce the future you want. This is where most people fail. They want to transform, but they refuse to change their environment. They want to build a business, but they stay in the same town where no one believes in them. They want financial freedom, but they spend every weekend with people who mock ambition, and they wonder why nothing changes. Carnegie would have told you plainly, your environment will win. It always wins. Willpower is temporary, environment is constant, and if you're trying to fight your environment with discipline alone, you'll lose. The only solution is to change the environment. So here's the challenge. Look at the 5 people you spend the most time with. Are they building what you want to build? Are they thinking at the level you want to think? Are they pushing you or holding you back? And if the answer makes you uncomfortable, you already know what you need to do. Hill learned this from Carnegie, but Hill still tried to be kind about it. Carnegie wasn't kind. He was effective. And effectiveness meant controlling every variable, including the people around him. That's not motivation. That's architecture. And if you're serious about success, you need to become the architect of your life, not the passenger. This channel is for builders, not dreamers. If you're someone who's willing to make the hard decisions that most people avoid, subscribe. We don't deal in theory here. We deal in what works. Now we arrive at the 5th lesson. The one Hill rarely spoke about in public. The one that makes people uncomfortable. The one that, if you understand it, changes how you see success entirely. Carnegie believed that success required something most people are unwilling to accept. He believed that to build an empire, you must be willing to prioritize the empire above everything else, above comfort, above approval, above the need to be liked, and yes, even above fairness. This is the part Hill edited out. This is the part that doesn't fit into motivational seminars or inspirational books. Because Carnegie understood that the world doesn't reward the most ethical person. It rewards the most effective one. And effectiveness often requires decisions that feel ruthless. Carnegie controlled labor. He negotiated from positions of strength. He didn't build U.S. Steel by being generous to competitors. He built it by outmaneuvering them, by consolidating power, by making moves that others considered too aggressive. And when people criticized him, he didn't defend himself. He didn't apologize. He kept building. Hill saw this. He documented the strategies, the principles, the systems. But when he wrote Think and Grow Rich, he reframed it. He made it about desire and faith and persistence. He made it palatable. He removed the edges. Because the truth Carnegie lived by wasn't something you could sell to the masses. It was too uncomfortable, too direct, too honest about what winning actually requires. Here's what Carnegie would have told you. Success is not a democracy. It's not fair. It's not designed to make everyone feel good. It's designed to reward the person who's willing to do what others won't. And sometimes, that means making decisions that isolate you, that make people question your character, that force you to choose between being loved and being effective. This doesn't mean Carnegie was evil. It doesn't mean he lacked principles. It means he understood that principles and popularity are not the same thing. He gave away most of his fortune later in life. He built libraries, funded education, supported communities. But he did that after he built the empire, not before. And that order matters. Most people want to be good and successful at the same time. They want to win without making anyone uncomfortable. They want wealth without making hard choices. And Carnegie would have told you, that's not how it works. You can be kind after you're powerful, but if you try to be kind while you're building power, you'll lose. Because someone else, someone willing to make the hard call, will take it from you. Hill understood this, but he also understood that this message wouldn't sell books, so he softened it. He turned ruthlessness into persistence. He turned control into masterminding. He turned Carnegie's doctrine of effectiveness into a doctrine of belief, and it worked. Millions of people bought the book, but most of them never built the empire, because they never learned the lesson Carnegie actually taught. Here's the question you need to ask yourself. Are you willing to be effective even when it's uncomfortable? Are you willing to make the decisions that isolate you, that make people question you, that force you to stand alone? Because if you're not building an empire, you're managing comfort, and there's nothing wrong with that, but don't confuse it with what Carnegie did. This is the lesson that shocks people, not because it's cruel, but because it's true. And most people would rather believe in a version of success that doesn't require sacrifice, a version where you can have everything, keep everyone happy, and still win. Carnegie didn't believe in that version. He believed in the one that worked. So here's where we land. Napoleon Hill became famous. Andrew Carnegie became powerful. Hill taught millions. Carnegie built industries. And the 5 lessons you just heard, the lessons Hill learned as a student, are the difference between theory and execution, between wanting success and engineering it. The first lesson was identity. Become the person who wins. Don't just wish for the result. The second was urgency. Stop waiting. Start moving. The third was discipline. Build systems, not reliance on motivation. The fourth was environment. Control every variable, including the people around you. And the fifth was effectiveness. Be willing to prioritize the outcome above approval. These lessons weren't designed to make you comfortable. They were designed to make you effective. And if you apply them, you won't just think differently. You'll act differently. And action is the only thing that builds empires. This is the legacy Carnegie passed to Hill. And this is the legacy Hill tried to pass to you, even if he had to soften it along the way. Now you have the unfiltered version. The question is, what will you do with it? If you're ready to build, not just dream, subscribe now. This channel is for people who understand that success isn't about being comfortable. It's about being relentless. And if that's you, you're in the right place. Stay uncommon.